Good morning. I'm Kim Mosley, President of the Los Altos Chamber of Commerce. I'm truly thrilled and honored to welcome you to the 2022 State of the Cities Luncheon. I know that many of you had the opportunity to pick up a delicious lunch from our local favorite, the Rustic House Oyster Bar and Grill, and I thank you for supporting our local merchants. I'll review our agenda for this morning, which will be as follows. We'll begin with introductions and recognitions. You could advance the slide, Nicole. We'll begin with introductions and recognitions. We will hear from our honored guests, Congresswoman Eshoo, Senator Josh Becker, Assemblymember Marc Berman, and Supervisor Joe Simitian. Please note that due to a conflicting commitment for Supervisor Simitian, we've changed the order of our guest speakers, and Congresswoman Eshoo has graciously accommodated the supervisor's schedule, so he will speak prior to her welcome address. Then our keynote speakers, the mayors of Los Altos Hills and Los Altos, and then we will also recognize our Walter Singer Award recipients. We would ask that you keep your cameras off and muted unless you're presenting. Next slide. I would like to thank our sponsors of the State of the Cities event, Young Craig and Company, Star One Credit Union, El Camino Health, and Lucille Packard Children's Hospital. Next slide. Our premier chamber members, OPS, which is Operational Performance Systems, ICO, and Dr. Jim Hill. Next slide. And El Camino Health. Next slide. Our visionary chamber members, Sons Deli and Toyota Research Institute. And with that, I would like to recognize our elected officials in attendance. U.S. Congresswoman Anna Eshoo from the 18th District, State Senator Josh Becker, 13th California Senate District, Assemblyman Marc Berman, 24th District, and Santa Clara County Supervisor Joe Simitian from our 5th District. From the town of Los Altos Hills, we have Mayor George Tyson, Vice Mayor Linda Swan, Council Member Stanley Mock, Lisa Schmidt, Kavita Tonka, and from the town of Los Altos Hills, the City Manager, Peter Hernajad. From the City of Los Altos, we have Mayor Anita Enander, Vice Mayor Sally Meadows, and Council Members Lynette Lee Ng, Nisa Flagger, Jonathan Weinberg, and City Manager Gabe England, and Chief of Police Andy Galea. From Los Altos School District Board of Trustees, President Steve Taglio, Vice President Jessica Spicer, Trustee Vladimir Ivanovic, Brian Johnson, and Vishali Surke. Los Altos District Superintendent Jeff Baer. From Mountain View Los Altos High School District Board of Trustees, President Catherine Vonnegut, Vice President Debbie Torek, and Superintendent Dr. Nellie Meyer. And from El Camino Healthcare District Board, we have Chair Julia Miller, Vice Chair Peter Fung, and Board Member John Zoglin. I would now like to introduce our Chamber Board Chair, Dennis Young from Young Craig and Company, to introduce our Chamber Board of Directors. Dennis is not only a Walter Singer Award winner, he's our own beloved financial guru and co-owner of the Los Altos Town Crier. Dennis, thank you for all that you do for the Chamber. Please help me in welcoming Dennis Young.
Good morning. As Kim said, I'm Dennis Young, this year's board chair of the Chamber of Commerce. I also want to welcome and thank all of you for coming to celebrate the State of the Cities luncheon with us today. I'd like to introduce the board of directors. Diana Batista from Lucille Packard Children's Hospital, Tori Drager, Drager's Market, Tim Giacomini, excuse me, Tim, Mission Trail Waste Systems, Anna Humanyun from Green Ivy Educational Consulting, Katja Jingarian from Smythe and Cross Jewelers, Mimi Lee, Curves Los Altos, my partner at the town crier, Kathy Lira, Joe Maletti from Avid Bank, Dr. Nellie Meyer from MBLA School District, Ryan Morris from Bari Bar Restaurant, good music, Tracy Murray, Cedar Crest Nursing and Rehab Center, Terry Watkins from Boston Private Bank, myself, Rashad Wiley from Star One Credit Union. Now I want to turn it over to my colleague and partner at Young Craig and Company CPAs, Lonnie Gary, to introduce our first speaker. Lonnie.
Thank you, Dennis. Good morning, everyone. Young Craig and Company is a full-service accounting firm located here in Mountain View and serving the communities of Los Altos Hills, and Mountain View. This year, we're celebrating our 45th anniversary. On behalf of my partners, Marc Liarditi and Fern Amaral, our founder, Dennis Young, and me, we're proud to be supporters of the Los Altos Chamber and this State of the City's luncheon. Now for our first speaker. Our first speaker is Joe Simitian, Supervisor for the 5th District of Santa Clara County. His district includes Palo Alto, Mountain View, Cupertino, Stanford, Los Altos Hills, and Saratoga, along with portions of Sunnyvale and San Jose. He was elected to the Board of Supervisors in 2012, re-elected in 2016, and again in 2020. Joe's public service over the years includes stints as a member of California State Senate, the California State Assembly, Mayor of Palo Alto, President of the Palo Alto School Board, and an earlier term on the Santa Clara Board. Joe brings to his work a wide-ranging perspective and background, service at all levels of state and local government, hands-on experience in the private sector, as well as professional education and training, particularly in his work in public service. Please join me in welcoming County Supervisor Joe Simitian.
Thanks, Lonnie, and thanks, by the way, Anna, for letting me slip in here. Ordinarily, I would be embarrassed, but in this instance, it's actually a delight because I get to tell everyone I was the warm-up act for Congresswoman Anna Eshoo, so that's a fun thing. And it also, on a more serious note, gives me an opportunity to share with everyone who's here today just real appreciation for the work you've done on getting us through the pandemic at the federal level. Most of the work that people see is a little more local, but for those of you who don't know, in her role as chair of the Health Subcommittee on the Energy and Commerce Committee, Anna has really been the leader in terms of developing and moving more vaccines. So thank you for that, Anna. It's been a critical effort, and the fact that I am taking up a few minutes here before we hear from you is gives me that opportunity. So thank you, and thank you again. I wanted to just share with folks who are on the call this morning or in the meeting my own observation that has developed over the last few years, and certainly during these last couple of pandemic years, on the importance of the relationships that we have built together over the years, working in common purpose. And, you know, we'd like to talk grandly about the institutions of government and our democratic system, of which we're justly proud. But, you know, when there's a moment of need or urgency, it matters that we have developed real relationships. And it matters that people are not just officially connected, but that they are our friends and our neighbors and our colleagues and our partners in good work, so that, you know, if there's a loan program at the county for small businesses, I can pick up the phone and talk to Kim and say, hey, let's make sure your folks know about this. if there's a problem in our sheriff's department and at our county jail, I can sit down and talk to the folks at the Los Altos Town Crier. And I know, because we have a relationship, that they will hear me, and they know, hopefully, that I wouldn't come to them if it weren't real and serious. That's a function of the relationships, the ability to pick up the phone, shoot somebody an email, and know that there's a real connection built over time, and that you understand one another, so that if I hear from somebody in Los Altos Hills about the fire district and, hey, can't we make something work at Station 8 that keeps us all safer, not only in the hills, but in Los Altos, if I am talking to somebody about their concern about public safety and, hey, can we make this license plate reader thing work? I can talk to Stanley. I can say, hey, but let's figure this out. There's got to be a path. And so I want to thank the Chamber, the Rotary Club, the Town Crier, all of the institutions that we take for granted that build connections, that build relationships, that allow us to really know one another in a way that goes beyond the institutions, beyond the formal connections that we have really made the difference through the years and will make the difference in the years ahead. So my thanks again to the Chamber and to all of you. If you don't have those relationships, I can't resist. Then you don't know that it's pronounced Nisa rhymes with Lisa, Fliger rhymes with Tiger. You don't know that Anita is going to have that particular question on the count. These relationships are so important. I can't stress it enough, and I want to thank you for taking me into the community over the years, developing real relationships. And with that, I will say I look forward to gathering in person next year, as I know we all do. I thank my friend and Congresswoman Anna Eshoo for the courtesy. My district has just changed. I still have Los Altos and Los Altos Hills, so no worries there. But I now have the opportunity to represent Los Gatos and Montes Sereno. That's a new development for me. And so I am coming to you live from Los Gatos. And I am about to go off and visit with some folks here because we have some relationships to develop in the cause of our mutual good work. Thank you and take care. And to our mayors, thanks for all you do.
Thank you so much, Supervisor Simitian. Really appreciate your making time to join us this morning, and really appreciate your comments as we all do partner together. I thank you so much. So now I would like to introduce our United States Congresswoman, Anna Eshoo. Like the Silicon Valley region she represents, Congresswoman Anna G. Eshoo exemplifies innovation. For over 2 decades in Congress, Representative Eshoo has defended consumers, promoted American competitiveness and innovation, fought for access to health care for families and children, protected the environment, and encouraged development of clean energy technology. On January 15th, 2019, the Democratic members of the House Energy and Commerce Committee voted to elect Congresswoman Eshoo as the first woman ever to serve as chair of the Health Subcommittee. Representative Eshoo has served on the powerful House Energy and Commerce Committee since 1995. And she previously served as the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Communications and Technology for 6 years, the first woman in the history of the subcommittee to serve in a leadership role. Before COVID struck, Congresswoman Eshoo wrote the nation's Biodefense, Pandemic Vaccine, and Drug Development Act. Her law helped make today's COVID vaccines possible and saved millions of lives. As chairwoman of the Health Subcommittee, Congresswoman Eshoo has had a major role in the congressional response to the COVID-19 pandemic, including providing federal funding and support for vaccines, treatments, and testing. Yesterday, as part of her weekly town hall series, she hosted a tele-town hall meeting regarding Russia's war on the Ukraine. She was joined by Professor Michael McFaul, former ambassador to Russia, as her special guest to share his expert testimony with constituents. Please join me in welcoming our beloved Congresswoman, Anna Eshoo.
Well, good morning. Thank you, Kim, for that overly generous introduction. I'm so happy to join all of you today, and a shout out to all of the elected officials that are a part of this. Thank you for your public service, dedicated public service, and to the entire board of the Chamber of Commerce, and for your exceptional leadership, Kim, of the Los Altos Chamber. As I was listening to Joe and relationships, I couldn't help but think of going back many years to when I was maybe 13 or 14 years old. My father was a businessman. He was a jeweler and a watchmaker by trade. And he used to take me to the dinners of our local Chamber of Commerce. So the chambers and what they represent in our local communities, the building that they do, the outreach, and weaving together other institutions in our community is a very important American tradition. So bravo to all of you for your work. I was asked to give an update on my work in progress over the past year, and also what may be of interest to the cities coming up in Congress. When I spoke to you last year, Congress had just passed the American Rescue Plan. That was a $1.9 trillion with a T, $1.9 trillion law, the largest single expenditure in the history of our country. And that was to support public health, hospitals, our overall economy by putting shots in the arms of the American people, money in their pockets. I think, as time goes on, the past kind of blurs, but we were the country, our entire economy had come to a screeching halt. And so what we did, both the massive help to small businesses in our community, across the country, of course, across the state of California, a nation state, that legislation and what came out of it, really, and economists have said this, prevented a depression in our country. That's how important it was. Now, one of the provisions that I fought very, very, very hard for was the money's going to states. The federal government traditionally sends money to the states. The states then distribute the money. All of us, and I served in local government, so that really shaped me. The state usually takes the cream off the top, and then the rest is sent to the cities and school districts. And I fought very hard to change that formula. The states would get their direct funding, cities and towns would get theirs, school districts would get theirs, and I was successful at that. And remember that the impacts of the pandemic, especially for cities, was meant to replace their lost revenues because they have to fund, cities have to fund their city services, invest in local infrastructure, all of their responsibilities. Los Altos received $7,197,928. Los Altos Hills received $2,015,961 from that legislation. And the first tranche of that funding was delivered last spring. The second tranche is going to be available in the coming months. We were successful in reviving. This is something that most people really don't realize right now. But we were successful in helping to revive our economy, which in 2021 experienced the fastest economic growth since 2014 and created 6.5 million jobs. I think that investment in small businesses to help them get through the pandemic small businesses are the backbone of our national economy. So it worked. Now, looking ahead to legislation in the coming year, Congress is preparing now for the new fiscal year, which begins in October. I'm particularly proud to have secured $12.5 million in projects, community projects that cities put forward to me, and they are excellent projects. I wish there were more. We're limited in doing that, and there is a great deal of transparency and vetting that takes place to safeguard those public dollars. And some have maligned it as wasteful spending. I think I know the needs of the people of my congressional district throughout the cities and towns much better than some federal agency. So these dollars are also very, very helpful. One of my top priorities in Congress is climate change. And I really want to salute Los Altos and Los Altos Hills because they've made bold commitments as part of their climate action plans to do their part in addressing this. It's an existential threat. Los Altos has pledged to reach net zero carbon emissions by planting 10,000 new trees and reduce energy usage by 20% by 2035. And Los Altos Hills will cut its greenhouse gas emissions in half by the end of the decade and phase out natural gas by 2045. So bravo to both of the cities, not only for their commitment, but the actual plan that they have put into place. But federal commitment is absolutely essential in this. And the Build Back Better legislation contains over $500 million for climate change purposes. The good news is that on a bipartisan basis, which we always have to celebrate because it's tough to do in Congress, we passed the infrastructure law. This is the single largest investment in infrastructure in our country, in the history of our country. The last important investment was during the Eisenhower administration. Some of us remember that. Many of you are too young to know that. But very importantly, there will be a $4.5 billion guaranteed for the Bay Area alone, plus all the grants for grade separations, for transit, for clean transit. I could go on and on about it, but this is going to be a transformational change in our country, and it's really needed. Important dollars for wildfire prevention. Certainly Los Altos Hills are working to harden efforts, and of course for water storage, recycling, desalination to increase our water supply as we face a severe drought. So, over the last 2 years, I think everyone's life has been upended in some way, shape, or form. But there has been enormous unity here at home in our congressional district. What neighbors have done for neighbors, what communities have done assisting one another. There really has not been any light between us. And when people ask me what gives me the tenacity or the energy to keep doing this work, my answer is always the same. I'm inspired by my constituents. I see firsthand the goodness and the decency of the American people manifested right here at home in our communities. So I want to thank you all for your commitment, your love of community, And we know that as we have strong communities, we have a stronger nation. So all of my thanks to the Los Altos Chamber of Commerce for your ongoing work day in and day out. It counts, it shows, and I'm so proud to represent you. So thank you for having me here today and being able to just cast a little spotlight on some of the highlights in Congress. And always know that the trust that you place in me is a sacred one, and I always want to live up to it. So Kim, thank you for your extraordinary leadership. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Congresswoman Eshoo. And I see you're wearing your I Heart Los Altos pin, so I must say something about that. What was that? I just wanted to especially honor you and your accomplishments, as well as it's National Women's Month. You're such an incredible and accomplished role model and a true leader for change, and I'm honored to consider you a mentor and friend. So thank you so much.
Can I just add one more thing, and that is Los Altos celebrating Roy and Penny Lave because their names are synonymous with community. There isn't a thing that they haven't taken on, accomplished, done happily, really over decades. So bravo, and I think on behalf of every single person throughout our communities, we say, thank God for you, Penny and Roy. You're extraordinary in the fullest sense of the word.
Absolutely, we do all concur. So thank you for that. Wonderful. Our next speaker will be California State Senator Josh Becker, and I would like to introduce Clay Morrow. He's the branch manager for the newly opened Los Altos branch of Star One Credit Union. Please welcome Clay Morrow.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the introduction, Kim. Once again, my name is Clayton Morrow. I'm the manager at the Los Altos branch in Star One. Star One Credit Union is one of Silicon Valley's largest member-owned financial institutions. Star One offers financial services to more than 117 members worldwide. With assets over $11 billion, Star One is ranked 17th in total assets among nearly 5,700 credit unions across the nation. As a member-owned financial institution, we are focused on providing long-term financial solutions to all of our members. As a result, we are able to return our profits back to you in the form of money-saving benefits, which include high interest on our savings accounts, low interest rates on real estate, credit card, and auto loans, and one of the best interest-bearing checking accounts in the business. Our mission is to improve each member's life by delivering valuable financial services. For more information, feel free to visit us at our website at www.starone.org. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Senator Josh Becker. He is a public policy innovator working at the nexus of community activism, technology, and social justice. He was elected to the state Senate in November 2020. Senator Becker represents the residents of California's 13th Senate District, which comprises most of San Mateo County and the northern part of Santa Clara County. He is the author of several bills focused on accelerating California's transition to 100% clean energy and net zero emissions, voter access and justice reform, and leveraging technology to provide greater economic mobility for all Californians. After earning an MBA and JD at Stanford, he went on to help start, invest, and advise many small businesses and startup companies. Josh has long been a champion in pushing businesses to create social good. Please welcome Senator Josh Becker.
Oh, I can't hear Senator Becker.
Hello, and thank you to Mayor Enander and Mayor Tyson and to the cities of Los Altos and Los Altos Hills and the Chamber of Commerce for inviting me to speak with you today. Though I'm in session in Sacramento, I'm excited to share with you what we have in store this year. Looking back over last year, it was a fun and successful freshman year. Of course, much of the year was consumed with the COVID response. And was honored to work with many of you on vaccine equity, to vaccinate teachers, to help get our schools reopened. And now, thanks to the perseverance of our communities, we're starting to move fully forward again. Last year, I authored 7 bills that the governor signed into law, including 2 climate bills and one based on research out of Stanford on standardizing rules on signature verification so that more ballots are counted in our elections. I'm also the proud author of Senate Resolution 59, which passed with a unanimous bipartisan vote to establish Ruby Bridge's Walk to School Day in November. That idea came about from local students who wanted to honor the civil rights icon, and I was delighted to bring it to fruition. I'm looking forward to year 2, which is already off to a great start. Last week, I presided over the Senate for the first time, and that was a lot of fun. This year, we will continue to focus on improving quality of life here in the peninsula. I introduced a bill to start creating a seamless transportation system with schedule integration and fare integration. Let's have a world-class transit system here in the Bay Area. We're also working on tough issues like homelessness and getting more state money for affordable housing. We're working with law enforcement to shut down the selling of goods from retail thefts and fund the enforcement and prosecution of theft-related crimes. Addressing climate change is one of the greatest issues, of course, facing our world today. California emits, as you may know, 420 million metric tons of CO2 every year. We need to get that to 0. Last year, we reduced 5 million metric tons. So we're moving in the right direction, but obviously have to move a lot faster. So I've made addressing climate change one of my legislative priorities and was honored to be part of California's delegation to the UN Climate Conference in Glasgow last year. This year, I'm working on several climate-related bills. One bill, which is SB 1203, sets a target for all California agencies to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2035. Government needs to lead the way, and we need to use the procurement power of government to help continue to buy down the cost of clean energy technologies. I've also introduced legislation to continue our effort to get our grid to true 24/7 clean energy, which means investing in resources when the sun isn't shining and the wind isn't blowing, like long-duration storage, geothermal, demand response to pull load off the grid. I also have bills on education technology and meals for kids in childcare. Our budget continues to be strong, which is a testament to the resilience of California's residents and to our businesses. I'm grateful to our entrepreneurs, many in this area, who have been fueling the budget surplus and feel a tremendous responsibility to use this money wisely. I also want to share a little bit about what we're doing at the state level to help small businesses recover from the hit they've taken during the pandemic. The California Microbusiness COVID-19 Relief Grant Program provides approximately $50 million in one-time grant funding statewide and sent approximately $2.4 million to Santa Clara County to aid small businesses adversely affected by the pandemic. Thanks to the Board of Supervisors, I'm happy to say the program provided about 875 local small businesses with $2,500 each grants in financial relief. I'll wrap up by thanking the city and town staffs and the business owners here today. Again, thank you for what all of you did during the pandemic and for all you have done and continue to do to help our region recover from the pandemic. Because of you, we continue to be innovators and business leaders throughout the state and throughout the nation. Our region does. I couldn't be prouder and more honored to represent you in the State Senate and look forward to seeing you in person again soon. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Senator Becker. I would now like to introduce Rashad Wiley of Star One Credit Union. He's the Community and Business Development Representative. Rashad serves as treasurer of the Los Altos Chamber Board and was our 2019 Member of the Year. So welcome, Rashad.
Thank you, Kim, for the introduction. I'm proud to be on the Los Altos Chamber Board of Directors. And if you're local to Los Altos, please visit Star One's new office that we just opened. Marc Berman was first elected to the California State Assembly in November 2016. He represents the 24th Assembly District, which includes Southern San Mateo County and Northern Santa Clara County, spanning from the heart of Silicon Valley over the hill to the beautiful coastside. Marc chairs the Assembly Business and Professions Committee, and until late 2021, Marc chaired the Assembly Elections Committee, where he was a leader on protecting voting rights, shielding voters from deceptive election practices, making election information more accessible, and improving election cybersecurity and campaign finance disclosure. He also chairs the Select Committee on the Master Plan for Higher Education in California, which is conducting a review of California's higher education practices, policies, to make sure they meet the needs of current and future students. Marc has had one of the highest rates of success in the legislature, having sent 61 bills to the governor in his first 5 years in office. Most recently, he championed legislation that requires election officials to mail voters a ballot before every election. Please join me in welcoming Assemblymember Marc Berman.
Thank you, Kim, for the invitation to be here today.
Hello.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Kim. Thank you. Thank you, Kim, for the invitation to be. My name is Assemblymember Marc Berman, and as you hopefully know by now, I have the privilege of representing Los Altos and Los Altos Hills in the State Assembly. I wish I could be there in person this year, but I'm at the Bay Area Legislative Caucus Retreat, working with my colleagues from around the Bay Area to bring more resources to our region and to 8024 to address housing and homelessness, sea level rise and climate change adaptation, and other issues of great importance to our communities. Last year was my most successful legislative year to date. A few highlights from the bills I wrote include AB 1346 to ban the sale of new small gas-powered engines, such as leaf blowers and lawnmowers, starting in 2024. AB 37 to make California a permanent vote-by-mail state, and AB 1111 and 928 to transform the transfer process in California to make it easier for students to achieve their higher education dreams. We're still putting the finishing touches on this year's bills, which will include efforts to build more affordable housing, reform California's flawed recall process, increase the ranks of computer science teachers in California, improve the governance structure at VTA, and address the growing issue of hate speech that is plaguing our communities. There's good news on the budget front, as California is projected to have a $45 billion surplus. We must use this money wisely to address California's biggest challenges, including homelessness and climate change, and continue to strengthen our budget reserves. But what I am most looking forward to in the coming months is to starting to see all of you again in person, whether it's at community events, in my district office, or just around town. See you soon.
Thank you, Assemblyman Berman. We're now going to switch to our featured State of the City addresses by introducing each of our honorable mayors. I'm going to start with Mayor of Los Altos Hills, George Tyson. Each year we rotate between Los Altos Hills. So Mayor Tyson gets to go first this year. I've had the privilege of serving in a couple of areas with him, and he is a true public servant, a native of the Bay Area. Mayor Tyson has a long history of community activism. He served on many nonprofit boards, including as a school board member of the Cupertino Union School District, elected to the Los Altos Hills Council in 2018. He is proud to serve as mayor this year. He and his wife, Stephanie, a retired Los Altos school district teacher and mentor, have lived in Los Altos Hills since 2019. In his professional life, he's been an executive at biotech startups, currently consults for small companies in developing new life-saving medicines, and teaches the capstone process design course for graduating chemical engineering students at UC Berkeley. So with that bumbled introduction, let's give a warm welcome to Mayor George Tyson.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Let me go ahead and share my slides. And I will say that we moved to Los Altos Hills in 2009. In case that helps understand all of that. And so thank you very much for the Chamber for setting up this event. That's a ton of work, and I am proud to have the opportunity to speak with you here today. I'll start off by introducing our council members. We've got myself, we've got Vice Mayor Linda Swan, Council members Stanley Mock, Lisa Schmidt, and Kavita Tonka. And I do want a special shout out to Kavita for serving as such a great role model for me by serving as mayor last year. I'm going to move now to just talk about some of the things going on in our community and give you a sense of our progress and direction. Starting off with quality of life and our community character, we've done some early work with SB 9. I think many people are quite concerned about how we are implementing future development. We've implemented our objective design standards as a part of that. And then the housing element, every city and town is working in that. We had a major meeting just late last night to alert residents to what some of the options are in terms of meeting our required building numbers. And as mentioned earlier, we've implemented a climate action plan. In terms of public safety, you've heard glimmers about that before. We're participating in our fire service review throughout the county, also our sheriff's contract and monitoring an issue of great interest to us in terms of public safety from law enforcement, in particular burglaries. And then also we're just great partners with the Los Altos Hills County Fire District. Two of us serve as commissioners of that district. So we have a really, really good connection in making sure, especially as we head off into another year of drought, who knows what dangers we're going to face. So we stay on top of that. It's very important. You expect this of your government, effective service, delivery, and governance. There's a photo of me doing my Zoom office swearing in. We are going to complete a community survey, and just so you know, we're just issuing a promotional video, I think this morning, and we're going to have our very first community survey next week. And so sign up if you can. We want to get as many people as possible because the decisions we make, they won't be good ones if we haven't heard from you first. Late last year, we renegotiated our green waste contract for garbage service, and we have an ongoing effort, a sub-team, I'm part of that too, along with Vice Mayor Swan, in revisiting our service agreement. And then we've also implemented hybrid meetings, and in the future, we're going to see more of that. Infrastructure, another important thing you expect of your town. I don't have this on a slide, but we continue to have high quality roads. We are hoping this year to break ground on an undergrounding of utilities project centered on the El Monte Fire Station, a key evacuation route, and a key assembly area in the event of earthquake or fire that could be a concern there. To have undergrounding utility lines will do us much good. We already completed the phase 1 of town hall improvements, very cost effectively enclosing an existing area. And then we've also received a grant from Prop 68 that we're speeding along to implement in terms of improving some facilities at our Bersima Hills ball field, which is really quite a treasure. Our finances, just in case you're wondering, they're very good. We have a strong budget. We have a strong sewer fund. We have very good reserves. And we also, as mentioned earlier by Congressmember Eshoo, have received American Rescue Plans, and we're coming up with a plan for how we can allocate that to best serve all of you in the community. Here's something I found the other day, 10 best places to live in California for 2021. And it shows Los Altos Hills, number 3. And you see some interesting things about how educated people are here. People make a lot of money as well, but it's very nice to hear that we made this list, number 3. And this next slide shows the 10 best places to live, and there number 3 is Los Altos Hills, and oh my goodness, I should proofread my slides. Please ignore number 1 on that list. I don't want you to look at that. You know, I don't even know how they create these lists. Let me talk a little bit about our staff and what they're able to accomplish, especially during all of the efforts we've had through COVID terms of safety protocols, we've kind of gotten through it pretty well. In our fiscal stewardship, in terms of reviewing fees, and we've got a community service day with our town staff. You see them at Hidden Villa, another neighboring treasure. Also, communication and transportation, or transparency, very important to all of us. And you're seeing that through an improved weekly city manager's report, and I encourage you to sign up for that too. It's very informative. It comes out weekly. It tells you all the meetings. You don't have to go to them all, but you know about them and you can be a part of that. And so we did something we've never done before in terms of the timing. We set our clear goals in January with a goal setting session, and we brought in all of our town committees and commissions to help populate that and then make sure that it worked well. So we've got a plan that we're executing, and we'll give an update on that periodically as time goes by. Other things we're concerned about are our staff engagement and empowerment. I don't know how many of you know, just you've heard about the Great Resignation. Well, it's happening in cities and towns. It's happening with us. And so what we're looking at is how can we make our place, our town, an attractive place to work and enjoyable and worthwhile. And then at the same time, we're looking at using the government in promoting the use of modern technology. Okay. And we have so many new people. There's just a slide that shows some of them. Peter Pernijad just joined us at the end of October. Everybody else on this slide joined us no more than I think about 7 or 8 months ago. So lots of new people working together. This is the time to get it right. Now, I've mentioned our goals as a city council, and I've talked about the administrative staff, but let's not forget the residents in general, and then in particular, the committees and commissions. We have a lot of committees and commissions for a town of our size, but you know what? We have those resources. We have those outstanding volunteers. And so you see a listing of them here. And one thing important to mention too, is that some of these are joint projects or joint commissions with Los Altos. So when you talk about your overall community and your goals and working together, I think that that serves as a really good mention, a reference to that. And so here's my last slide. Little League opening day, the first one since 2019. And you know, it's caused me to reflect. And I want to share some thoughts with you because I remember so clearly. I remember where we were a year ago at this very same meeting. We had so much strife in the community, in our city, in our town, in the school district. You saw it in the Los Altos town crier. You saw it in the letters to the editor. Next door, oh my goodness. And at the same event last year, I remember one of the speakers that was Mr. Joe Simitian. And he said, I know this community and you're better than that. You're better than that, Joe Simitian said. And you know what? He's right. He's right. We have been and we are better than that. And as I look around, I see things look so much firmer. I think we're on firmer ground. Okay. But as I look again at this photo here, I don't know what's next. I don't know where the pandemic is heading. But here's what I do know. I do know that if we work together, if we partner, if need be, we cut each other a little slack, we can be that better community. And I think it was Abraham Lincoln who talked about finding our better angels. And I think about Joe Simitian with respect to our better selves. And I say to you then, we have it in us to be that better community by any measure, by any measure. And so with that, I will close. And I want to say that for all of your attention and all of your support this year, I thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your remarks, Mayor Tyson. Genuinely appreciate it. Very thoughtful and very informative. So thank you so much. I would now like to introduce Mayor Anita Enander of Los Altos. Anita Enander was first elected to City Council in 2018. Mayor Enander is a native and lifelong resident of the Santa Clara Valley. She began her career as a manager in the federal government and then owned her own management and consulting business for 25 years before acquiring and serving as CEO of the international corporation Arabian Horse World. She also founded and served on the boards of several nonprofit organizations, including an international school and a research organization. She became involved in Los Altos civic affairs through the Downtown Buildings Committee in 2015, and then served on the Planning Commission prior to her election to the City Council. She and her husband, Michael, have lived in Los Altos since 1978, and their grown daughter graduated from Egan Junior High and Los Altos High School. When not involved in city business, Mayor Enander remains dedicated to research, breeding, training, and riding Arabian horses. Please welcome Mayor Anita Enander.
Thank you so much, Kim, and welcome to everyone. I want to thank Mayor Tyson for going first with that great presentation. And I also want to acknowledge all of my colleagues who are here, immediate prior Mayor Nisa Flagger, Vice Mayor Sally Meadows, Council members Lee Eng and Jonathan Weinberg. Thank you all for being here together with our city manager, Gabe England. If you ask most residents, what's the best thing that's happened in the past year? The answer won't be anything that the city council did. It's most likely the kids are back in school. So knowing that we are playing second fiddle to our school districts, and we appreciate that many of our managers from the school district are here with us today, I still appreciate the opportunity of talking with you about some of the things that have improved Los Altos for residents in the past year before moving on to our future plans and challenges. And I have with me to put up the slides and drive the slide deck, Anthony Carneseca. As Supervisor Simitian said, relationships are so important, and we rely on Anthony to sustain the day-to-day relationships between our city and our business community. So thank you, Anthony, for being here. Go to the next slide. So I picked just a few things that are kind of outward facing that people will see that have happened in the past year. First, of course, the long delayed construction of the community center. And we're in the process of full transition to its full operation, and which we really need because we have an annual $800,000 hit on our budget that we're going to have to deal with for the next some number of years. The second thing is, and the community center took so long to get to, and some of the things on this list are like that. They're things that we worked at, and we finally made them happen. And this is another one. When we knew we were building the community center, we told the Friends of the Library that, we didn't have a place for them. But it's an organization that makes such huge financial contributions to our community, to the library, and not just through the organization that does it, but because it builds and rebuilds libraries and brings our community together. So happily, although we've had them in temporary quarters and we're talking about other types of temporary quarters, that's now been resolved in conjunction with the county so that they will have a permanent home inside the main library. And we look forward to that move in the coming months. Another almost decade-long issue, much studied and debated, a source of passionate advocacy and many opinions, off-leash dog parks. And we will create our first site at Hillview, not at a place where we had studied necessarily, but space that's been made available as a kind of a domino effect of finding the right place for the Friends of the Library. And so the new dog park will go into some of that area. At least a third of our residents have dogs, and the increase in multifamily housing in our community seems to correlate with even more need for outdoor space for exercising pets. So this is a great first and new step for our community. Not thought of much, but there will be shortly over a dozen new art installations in the coming months, in addition to the commissioned art pieces for the community center. I hadn't given a lot of thought to community art before I got elected to the city council. And now every time I go anywhere in town, I see a piece of art and I think, if that wasn't there, how empty would it look here? So I appreciate all the work, and Mayor Tyson mentioned the commissions. Our Public Arts Commission is one of just many, many commissions that does so much for our community. Perhaps the most important thing we've done in the last year was hire a new city manager. So next slide, Anthony. And we pretty immediately dropped on him 3 big challenges. Next slide, Anthony. There we go. The first was improving our financial management. Our financial systems were and are wholly inadequate for our city in this contemporaneous times. They are unduly labor intensive. They don't do the job of tracking funds and grants adequately, and they're unsuited for presenting financial information for decision making. And a complete overhaul of our financial management system is underway. And it's one of those things that people won't see much, but will have a huge impact on the ability of city council and of our staff to govern the city. Like virtually every other city, we have had huge turnover during COVID, and we had been carrying 6 vacant positions for a couple of years as a cost-saving measure. Now we are stretched beyond belief to provide even the legally required services in planning and building, in maintenance, in police services, and our other departments. Within 12 months, our city manager will be doing what Los Altos Hills has done, and installing a number of new leaders, including, I'm sorry to say, a new police chief. We're really chagrined, but still happy that Chief Galea is going to enjoy his retirement, but we're going to miss you terribly, Chief. We will soon have a new head of our planning development. We have a new head of finance, and there will be more than a dozen other critical positions filled. But beyond hiring, we need to make Los Altos a desirable place to work through improved compensation, benefits, and management culture. And that's going to be a big task for our city manager. Mr. England is also developing plans to move us to a sound plan to restore long neglected city infrastructure. This is not just about the police station, which many of you have heard about, with its failed air conditioning and flooding basement. We have failed to seal streets, which increases the long-term cost of repairs, failed to replace critical equipment, which means it spends more time in the shop than in service. Emergency generators that are long past their useful lives can hardly be relied on in case of emergency. Mr. England has compiled a thorough and actionable list of the infrastructure needs for our city, and the city council will be working to find ways to replace or repair that infrastructure. Mr. England took on all these challenges and gave one back to the council. As he made clear in example after example, a balanced budget isn't necessarily a good budget if it excludes critical expenses and allows infrastructure to run until it fails. This is an area where he's doing a great job of what we call upward coaching to the city council and the community. And unlike the state, we do not have a budget surplus. We are going to be struggling to balance and complete all the work we need in our city with the resources that are available to us. Anthony, next slide, please. I've listed here 5 major areas where council is working to meet our legal obligations and take opportunities to improve our city. These are some pretty high level types of ideas, so I hope you'll bear with me as I explain them. I'm sure that you have familiarity now with our updating of the housing element. The state is mandating we plan to increase the amount of housing we have by 17% in the next 8 years. And there are penalties, not just if we fail to do that plan, but if the planned housing is not built. Penalties that reduce or eliminate our ability to control development in our city. Whatever we do, we'll trade existing uses for more intensive housing uses. In the past 10 years, that has mostly meant replacing businesses with housing along First Street and on El Camino. For the future, and no doubt affecting the downtown, it means figuring out whether or how to continue to change business uses and or parking into housing. And the state expects more than half of those units to be subsidized as affordable housing, but without providing funds to pay for most of it. The statewide targets are so large that when legislators are asked how local governments should get such housing built, we're told, pass new taxes. Further, state law already restricts our ability to collect fees to support the infrastructure needs that additional housing puts on the city. And there are legislative proposals to actually prohibit us from collecting such fees on some units. That will transfer the costs to our other residents. So what we are doing with the housing element is just the beginning of deciding how we are going to transform our city and how we are going to pay for it. Next, I want to acknowledge that the businesses you have run have come through a terribly challenging period. And we know that we provided you some relief, but certainly not enough to compensate for the protracted experience of COVID. The downtown and other business districts are so much beloved elements of what makes Los Altos a desirable place to live. We're not Atherton. We want commercial centers. In the downtown, we have to find the right long-term solutions to sustain a healthy core, and that means adapting zoning to support the changing marketplace and being realistic about balancing demands for parking for customers with other uses. I've also already talked about some of the infrastructure challenges. We have engaged a polling company, which is currently working in our city to gauge resident views on whether and how best to raise funds for critical buildings, such as a new police station. In addition, we need to improve park facilities, replace aged equipment, become compliant with Americans with Disability Act requirements, improve the condition and safety on our streets for pedestrians, bicycles, and motor vehicles through our Complete Streets Master Plan, and more. Our planning to get ahead of this is getting better, but finding the resources to play catch up will be a significant challenge. Right now, we are projected to be about $2 million short for the next fiscal year. In addition, Council recently adopted a climate action and adaptation plan. Whether you believe we should add staffing to oversee the plan that is larger than our current planning department is not something that I'll talk about here. Rather, I want to echo what Congressmember Eshoo mentioned about our climate adaptation. One element that has been underappreciated is that, given the very high probability of sea level rise, as mentioned by Senator Becker, and irrespective of any other actions we take as a city, we will need to work with and participate with the city of Palo Alto in an infrastructure project that will allow the wastewater treatment plant to function. That plant is projected to go below sea level. This is a potential significant quality of life issue that we cannot ignore. Los Altons expect a very high level of service, and that includes maintenance of our city streets and medians, responsiveness from the planning and building department, parks and recreation activities, and much, much more. Those services are driven by two things that we've talked about: infrastructure and staffing. And we have to deal with both of those, which leads to the last part of this slide. Cities throughout California have a huge unfunded pension liability. The city has recently paid a part of that, but we need to continue to make annual payments to prevent the accumulated liability from growing and presenting an insurmountable problem to future councils. It's a simple problem. The state requires us to make up not just the principal, but the inflation cost, which is set based on their expected return of investments in the state pension fund. On a practical basis, that means that our unfunded liability grows by at least 6.5% a year, while any return on our own reserves and investments, largely because of required conservative limits, are rarely above 2%. You wouldn't run a credit card that has 24% investment, or a credit card with a 24% interest rate and keep a bunch of money in the bank making less than 8%. You'd pay off the credit card as soon as possible. And that's what we need to look at doing. That means setting aside money for such payments when it's very tempting to spend it on other items. Our financial commission, another important part of our city, has emphasized the importance of budgeting for and paying toward that unfunded liability every year to reduce the long-term otherwise growing liability. Further, based on what we are seeing in the marketplace, we are going to have to become more competitive with salaries and benefits to attract the quality and caliber of employees to deliver services as our residents expect. Next, Anthony. Our challenges going forward will be to balance needs that are clearly greater than our resources. Without our staff, we do not have a functioning city. We have to figure out how to attract, select, and retain a great staff. That means allocating sufficient funds for staff who deliver services and keep our city running, and paying down our unfunded liabilities. We have to figure out how to catch up on long neglected infrastructure and how to pay for new unfunded infrastructure needs from additional housing. And perhaps most difficult is how to find the right balance in the type of housing to be built in the future, how to pay for the housing that needs to be subsidized, and how to change our land use mix of housing and commerce to meet state mandated housing while maintaining the character, including the businesses that our residents cherish. If you find these challenges interesting, I encourage you to consider running for city council. I will share my personal view of what we need on our council, and it relates to an old saying. So please forgive here the gender pronoun you're going to see in the next slide. This is an old saying. A society grows great when old men plant trees in whose shade they shall never sit. This is the challenge for our city and the current and future city councils, to go beyond immediate needs and wants, to plan for and solve the difficult issues for the long term. I know that the chamber will continue to be engaged with our city through our commissions, as residents, with our city council and our city staff, to help us find the right answers, the very big issues that need to be solved for the future health of our city. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Enander, for those remarks and your insights. Greatly appreciated. The Walter and Marie Singer Business Volunteer Award is traditionally given at this event to recognize the Los Altos Business Leader of the Year, whose community service, generosity, and commitment to business exemplify the spirit of community that became Walter and Marie's personal hallmark. Each year, the recipient is selected by the people you see on the screen, the past recipients. The group decided that we would hold off selecting anybody until we were able to meet again, have this event in person, so that we could truly honor that new recipient. However, I'd like to recognize the past Walter and Marie Singer Award recipients shown on this slide. Those individuals highlighted in green are joining us today for this event. Myself, Roy Lave, Ron Labitich, Cameron Knight Desmond, Karen and Tom Smith, Liz Nyberg, and Julie Rose. But we also honor the others that are on this list who were unable to attend with us today. That wraps up our program. On behalf of the Chamber Board of Directors, I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us today for the State of the City's luncheon. I want to thank the Chamber staff for putting this event together, Kim Mosley, Nicole Walton, and Maria Crowder. It's been a terrific event. And Kim, why don't you wrap it up? Oh, wait a minute. We did form this last year a new nonprofit, the Los Altos Chamber Foundation, initials LACF, which caused Los Altos Community Foundation to change their name to Los Altos Mountain View Community Foundation. No, I'm kidding. but the Los Altos Chamber Foundation is a 501c3 arm of the Chamber of Commerce. So you can make tax deductible gifts of any amount to support the Chamber's efforts. Don't have to be a business person. It could be an individual, because you will get a tax deduction as our application is pending. The IRS is way behind in everything, but we know we're going to get approved, and it's retroactive to day one. So make contributions tax deductible to the Los Altos Chamber Foundation. Again, thank you, Kim and staff, and back to you.
Thank you, Dennis. Just have a few closing notes here. I wanted to thank our sponsors, Young Craig and Company, Star One Credit Union, El Camino Health, Lucille Packard Children's Hospital, OPS Systems, Sun Deli, and Toyota Research. Thanking each of our honored guests, Congresswoman Anna Eshoo, Senator Josh Becker, Assemblymember Marc Berman, and Supervisor Joe Simitian. And special thank you to Mayor Tyson and Mayor Enander for making this such an incredible event. I genuinely appreciate your support of the Los Altos Chamber of Commerce. We truly look forward to the State of the City's luncheon in 2023, when we can come together again in person. Have just a couple notes of reflection here regarding the comments and our state of affairs today. It's my sincere hope that 2022 is a year of stabilization and recovery for each of our businesses. I ask that you each continue your support of our local merchants, because many are still struggling to pay back rent and debt due to the pandemic, in addition to their current expenses and overhead. I want to acknowledge all of our elected officials that are here today for the personal dedication and sacrifice that each of you have made to ensure the safety and success of our communities and businesses through the pandemic. And in closing, I also appreciate your financial support and membership that you have in the Chamber of Commerce. You allow us to do the work that is necessary to bring our businesses through these challenging times. We've all learned how interdependent our success is, and please continue to contribute to our community through your time, talent, and treasure as you are able. Supervisor Simitian had it so right. It's our relationships that matter most, and I appreciate each and every one of you. We're currently creating a new Los Altos magazine and destination guide and preparing for the next chamber raffle. So please contact us if you're interested in participating in those events, but please be aware that they are happening, and look for ways to support us in that as well. And with that, please go out and enjoy the beautiful weather this weekend and support our local businesses. I thank you from the Los Altos Chamber of Commerce, and look forward to seeing you again in person very soon. Take care.